So, some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about tonight is kind of actually, oops, I can't do that, is getting back to the basics. What got me started on this whole thing is this concept, and I've been thinking about it all week long. And I was listening to some more Earl Nightingale stuff today. Here comes Bob Rienza. I was listening to some more Earl Nightingale stuff. If you've never listened to Earl Nightingale, he started back in the 50s. He really created a personal growth program. It was the first really one like it ever. And he's got some really great, phenomenal material. And it's all free on, or a lot of it is free on YouTube now. So if you just Google his name, you'll come up with some really good stuff. And I was listening to some stuff today while I was out doing my run. Yes, Danya, I still run in 30-degree, 20-degree weather. But I was out doing my run today in the snow, and I'm listening to Earl Nightingale while I was running. And I'm like, what he was saying was just resonating with me so deeply. And it also went along with what Pat and I had talked about earlier this week. We got into a really great conversation about the basics. And this really started out over I'm going to go to shared screen. And because stories are powerful, and it's to know because they can relay a message sometimes in a different way than just talking about it all the time, because we're saying the same thing week after week. What maybe sometimes can help is sharing a little bit on a story. And this first story starts out with this kid right here. His name's David Schmitz. He graduates pilot training, top of his class. He goes on, he's like a distinguished graduate. He's like a top of his class from college, top of his class in pilot training. This picture, I believe, is going to be from fighter lead-in training. And then from that, he goes to F-16 training. Now, the reason why I'm going to bring this up, and I'm not trying to start with a damper, but there's a point to my whole story, is that pilot error, leadership failures, and faulty ejection seat led to fatal June F-16 crash at Shaw. So he's no longer with us, right? And what we're doing here with Sealy, it's not going to kill anybody, right? So don't get the wrong message here. What I want to do is share with you how important the basics are. And the reason this leadership here is really what I want to focus in on, this leadership right there, because it is absolutely mind-boggling to me. Obviously, I flew F-16s for 20 years. And then I taught the last 10 years of that. I was at the schoolhouse teaching young kids like David here how to fly the F-16. And in that program, there's a period of time where you teach the new pilot how to air refuel. That's, you're going right up underneath a tanker. Some of you may have seen, I posted it on my Facebook page a few days ago on Veterans Day. But you go right up underneath the tanker, and the boom from the tanker actually plugs into the airplane, and now you're flying as one, but the pilot is actually flying the airplane in formation off the tanker. It takes a lot of skill, a lot of focus, attention. Elke has actually had the opportunity to lay in the tanker bay and watch all this happen from the tanker point of view. And what had happened here, the reason why this caught my attention, it's caught the attention of a lot of people. When we do this in the training house, we do it in a 2-seat version of the F-16. We spend a couple flights doing that until they feel comfortable. Then we clear them solo, and all this is in the daytime. And then they get to do it by themselves in the daytime. We're monitoring from another airplane. And then we'll do it from the back seat at night. So they get a night tanker as well. This kid at Shaw Air Force Base, he's now operational at this unit. The very first time they ever send him to a tanker is at night solo. He never did it in F-16 training. He never did it in the daytime when he got out there. They sent him out there at night to do this the first time, and he cannot connect. And now he's a mess. And that leads to a calamity of errors, which eventually leads him to having to eject after he tried a second landing, and he had torn off his gear, just a mess of things that went wrong. and he ejected, and then they're saying something went wrong with the ejection seat, and that's the reason why he died. But my point of the story of all this is if he had been checked out as on the tanker properly by not skipping the basics, he'd be alive today. All right. So again, in Sealy, we're not going to kill anybody, but it's an important story. The next one I want to cover is, and maybe some of you are familiar with this, Sylvester Stallone's story. Maybe you've heard his story, maybe you haven't, but it is a phenomenal story, and I encourage you to Google it. It doesn't take long to read through it. I'm just going to give you the gist of it. He eventually went homeless, sleeping in a bus station and on the street. He had a dog that he could no longer afford to feed, and so he sells it to a bookstore owner for $25. And then he wrote this script for Rocky, and he couldn't sell it to anybody, but he believed in it passionately. Nobody was going to take away his belief of this movie script. And he eventually gets a studio to purchase it for $125,000. And, you know, I mean, talk about turning a homeless person's life around, right? But Sylvester was very adamant that he was going to be the star in the movie. And the studio's like, you're crazy. You're not an actor. There's no way that this is going to happen. I mean, he had done some acting in the past, but nothing like this, right? Not for a major motion picture. And then they offered him $250,000 for the script, and he refused. And then $350,000 for this script to Rocky. And the studio, I mean, and Sylvester was, no, I'm sorry. If I'm not starring in it, it ain't happening. And then the studio finally gave him basically 10 cents on the dollar. They bought the script for $35,000 and allowed him to star in the movie, which we all know went on to be one of the Hollywood's greatest blockbusters, right? And all the sequels that followed it. Again, passion, persistence, consistency. In fact, it's not a small anecdote. He did get his dog back. He sold it for $25. He went back to the person he sold it to, who still had the dog, offered him $100. The person said no. Then offered him $500. The owner said no. $1,000. The owner said no. And Sylvester was very, very, you know, attached to this dog. He ended up paying $15,000 to get his dog back. So yeah, life is tough, right? It can be very, very difficult, and we all come from different walks. We all come from different places. But again, consistency and persistency can pay off. And the last story I want to share real quick, this kind of going all across the board here. Everybody knows this band just by looking at them, right? It's Kiss. Very, very popular band back in the 70s. They did a rebirth in the late 90s. They did their farewell tour in 2000. And that's the original lineup, because these two players, this is the drummer, Peter Criss, this is Ace Frehley, the lead guitarist. And these two people kind of switched out. The roles switched out over the years, but they ended up doing their final tour pretty much intact like this. And the reason why I bring this up is, if I didn't know a lot of their story, but I was kind of reviewing a little bit on their story. And one of the things about their story is, even when they started touring, they're starting to pack stadiums and on this, you know, on the road and doing these shows. Their production was so massive, they weren't making any money off of it, and their albums weren't selling. So they had no income coming in, but they were out there touring and making, you know, Casablanca Records had believed in them enough to give them a shot. Anyhow, that's Paul Stanley, who is the lead singer and rhythm guitarist. He walks into their manager's office one day just to borrow $5. All right. He looks at the manager. The manager is wearing a sweater filled with holes, and he's got holes in his shoes, because that's how flat broke all of them were. Now, how easily would it have been to give up on that dream? How easily would it have been to just walk away, cave it in? Hey, this thing's never going to work, right? But that's not the attitude primarily led by Gene Simmons here, the bass player, because him and Paul, they believed in this band. They believed in the vision of where they were headed, was to be the most prominent rock band to ever hit the United States or the world. And they did pretty much that. They've now, several years after that story with their manager and the holes in the sweater, they went on, they were making $117 million a year. They went on to sell more gold albums than any other rock band in history. And they've got a total of over 100 million albums sold completely. So those are three stories that go to show that persistency and consistency and having that vision and having that dream is so important. And one of the things that Earl Nightingale was sharing in this audio that I was listening today is that we are all geniuses. You know, we all have a talent. And when we're born, our immediate environment and who we're being taught by are our parents and that immediate small sphere of influence. And then as we grow up, we tend to not broaden those horizons enough. And we're basically taught by the 95%. How does that relate back to this business? Most of us, when we're first starting out, have to battle with rejection, all right? The no's. Oh no, you don't know what you're doing. Oh, you're crazy. You know, this will never work. All those things. I mean, everybody on this call, I know for sure, has had a no, because all of you are engaged. All of you are plugged in. But the no's are coming from that 95% crowd that's never made money in network marketing. Does network marketing work? Have people made money in network marketing? Elke and I, because we had such a great team here as well, but we went C6 because we follow what Brad Hager is teaching us to do. And we're not 100% perfect with it. We don't do everything he tells us to do. We'd probably be even, a lot higher in the ranks if we did. But we do listen to at least 95% of what he says, right? And we try to put it into action as often as we can. Now, Brad Hager is amongst the top 5% of network marketers. So am I going to listen to the 95% of my friends and family and other prospects that I'm talking to that have no idea on how to take me to $100,000 a month? Or am I going to tap in and listen to what Brad Hager has to tell me, who has made well over $100,000 a month and $28 million, $30 million in this industry? Mm-hmm. So if I latch on and listen to what he has to say, and I do what the basics, the fundamentals to keep myself alive in this business, and I have that vision and the belief in myself to write my script and be a starring role in it, and I have that vision to see it so clearly as Kiss did, to be one of the top income earners, not only in this company, but in network marketing in general. You put all that together, folks, everything is here for you. You just got to start believing in here, believe in the vision, believe in your why, what got you motivated, what got you inspired to begin with in this business, and run with that. Remember, we become what we think most about. It's another thing that Earl Nightingale, that's his greatest secret, the greatest secret, which is another great audio of his, and that's what it is all about. Is we become what we think most about. James Allen, as a man thinketh, we become what we think. Even in the Bible, it talks about how we become what we think about. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's so important to have a vision board, to have your written down goals, to have those in your face all the time where you see it? It's because that way it's in the forefront of your mind. You're bringing it to your conscious mind on a daily, regular basis, so that you never lose sight of that vision. And so that is what you're thinking most about, not about, for instance, the setbacks, right? Are you thinking about the vision or the setbacks at the end of the day? Are you thinking what you did right, or are you thinking more about what you did wrong? This is my journal, and you're probably not going to be able to see it with all the lighting, but pretty much since we got started in the business, every single day, I write down what I did right and what went right in my business, all right? And then this, if you can see this is a list of every day that I have called Brad Hager. And I either left him a voicemail or I've talked to him on the phone. And you're going to see there's a lot more where I actually talk to him than voicemails on this. So I'm tracking everything because I'm keeping this in the forefront of my mind, because this is that important to me and where I want to go. So now how do you translate that for yourselves? And it's always going to come back to the why. Why did you get started in this business to begin with? You saw something of value to yourself when you got started here. And when you get those rejections, and we start going back to those three examples, David, who lost his life because of leadership not teaching him how to do the basic fundamentals, right? And you got Sylvester having that dream and that vision, the belief in himself, and then Kiss with the vision of where they were headed in this world. Relate that back to your why. Allow those three basic things to drive you in this business. And when you do that, your chances of getting more aligned with the 5%ers who've made money in this industry is going to happen for you. And when you do that, you start thinking differently, and those little things that seemed like, oh, it wasn't really important, become more important to you. And you don't allow yourself to go to bed at night until you've accomplished that, or you've at least addressed it in a positive frame of mind. Elke and I cannot teach you desire, but by giving it a little bit of extra effort each day, the basic plan is 7 to 10 hours a week, folks. I mean, an hour a day, it's not that complicated. But the challenge is we get busy with life, and even Elke and I mean, it happens to us sometimes too, where we don't get that full solid 1 hour a day. I mean, generally, obviously, I mean, we got an advantage. We're doing this. This is our, the only thing we're doing. I don't have a job anymore. But it's even with that, it's still easy to skip a day. And that just skipping one day is not a good thing. And then it turns into 2, it turns into 3. And now you only put 4 hours into your business. Next week, it's 2 hours. Next thing you know, 2-3 weeks later, you're not putting any time into it all. And you say, oh, this thing doesn't work. No, it absolutely works if you allow yourself to remain teachable and coachable, allow yourself to get over that uncomfortable stage where we'll never tell you anything to hurt your business. Anything we tell you is to help build your business, because we've probably been where you've at, because we've been doing this for a little bit longer. And we just know it works. That persistency and consistency, a little effort over time, doing the basics over and over again. And there was one other story that Earl shared in this audio today, and that was about this preacher, and he's driving down a country road, and there's farm field after farm field. All of a sudden he comes across this one farm field, and it's just beautiful with flowers. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And he's just driving by it, admiring how, man, this farmer must be amazing what he's been able to do. It is amazing what he's been able to do at this field. And all of a sudden he sees the farmer coming up on a tractor on a side road, a dirt road. And so the preacher pulls over, has this conversation with him. He goes, man, your field is just absolutely unbelievable. It's amazing what you've been able to do with this field. God must just be so proud of you. And the farmer sits there in his tractor thinking about it for a minute, and he responds, well, you should have seen when it was just God's alone. The point of the story is God gave you a gift. Whether you believe in God or not, it doesn't matter. You have a gift within you. What are you going to do with it? All right. We have something here that is absolutely incredible. Where we are headed with Sealy is absolutely phenomenal. If you can see 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, which I know is a challenge for many of you because you've never been around this industry before, but we have about not even 5,000 people in this company total. A network marketing company is considered new up to about 100,000 people. We will have 100,000 people in this company in the next several years, easily. And you are all at the ground floor of this. So take those little no's and those little rejections and just let them fly out the window, okay? Do not put them in here because they don't know what they're talking about. We as a collective do. And that's why these calls are so important. We're building a community that's going to last. We're going to become the dearest, closest friends. If you hang in with this, all right, and get through those no's, continue to to reach out to people. Make those 10 touches a day. What are those basic? Those 10 touches a day. In fact, I'm gonna go back to screen share for real quick because Brad laid all this out a couple of weeks ago and he made it very simple. Do a social media post several times a day. Text, email, message through Facebook. I am constantly making new friends on Facebook. I am constantly messaging them on Facebook. And I will tell you, 90% of them either never respond, don't want to have anything to do with what I'm talking about, but there is that 1 out of 10 that does, right? So that little bit, and it gets easier and easier if you do it over time. The Facebook Lives, 1 to 3 a week. Getting guests on the webinars. I've got the webinar coming up here in an hour and a half. You still have plenty of time to reach out and get a couple people on that. And then handing out samples, getting those samples out. We still have people that have not downloaded the Verb app. Make sure you know that everybody that you've been talking with in your group and your teams knows to download that Verb app and get those samples out ASAP. They're all going to expire. If you came in with the show special with them, they expire 90 days after basically the end of December, right? So you've got about a month to go. You definitely want to get them out. Brad mentioned that the time to get them out is not in December because people are going to be so wrapped up with the holidays and everything else. The time to get it out is now. I just, a lady that I reached out to, she's a fitness person. She's got 5,000 Facebook friends. She's got a huge following for her Facebook Lives and her fitness videos. And I reached out to her in the very beginning and said, hey man, we've got the best CBD ever. Did you ever use CBD? And she goes, oh yes, I'm very happy with my CBD. She didn't want to have anything to do with what I had, right? But I stayed friends with her. I don't know her personally, but I stayed friends with her, connected with her through Facebook. And then we got the sample program. I said, hey, you know what? I would like to send you a free sample just for you and your fiance. Give it a shot. So I sent one to her, one to him. And now she's really excited. They just got it. I mean, she finally agreed, right? So that's, over a year's worth of staying connected on Facebook. That's just one person. If I just focus on one person, this could be a long road, right? So that's why you want to have 10 to 15 to 20 people in process at all times as well. That's the basics. Make sure you follow up with people. And then I can't stress this one enough, the Monday night update calls. It is, again, about building the community. It's about learning from Brad Hager, one of the 5%ers in this industry. You might not agree with everything he's got to say. He may talk too fast for you. He may go too long for you.
Talk too Southern.
He may talk too much Southern for you. But the point is, if you start plugging into it, hold on, Fawn's joining us. If you plug into that and on a consistent basis, some of it's going to start absorbing inside here. And all those 3 things of doing the basics of believing in yourself and in this company and in this program, in the compensation, and then also having that extreme vision of where we're headed is going to start creating even more of a conscious thought and have that in front of you. So I know Elka's chomping at the bit to say something here, so I'm going to turn it over to her.
I just want to real quick add something because I know that, and I've been there before where you have the vision and you even have like the how-tos, but you can't get into the real process. And that really is where it comes to play. I would like to challenge you for yourself personally, but then also with the people that you're working with. How can you translate that into your business or into your job now, where you've been, because this is when you can relate it better to people and it becomes more a natural process instead of trying to go out and just make this happen. When you are able to relate what we're doing here, for example, trusting the process or doing something new or doing something different. Where in your line of work did you have to do that? And in the end, it worked out, even though you maybe fumbled your way through. And how can you, now you use it for yourself, but now here we are leaders on this call. How can you teach this a new person? So that's why I always ask, what is your profession? And what do you love doing? What are you best at? Where do you feel alive? Maybe somebody who has an accountant office, but he loves to play basketball. That's when he comes alive. And that's how you can elicit and translate what we're doing. We can always translate that into whatever they're doing or whatever their hobbies are. Because I think that is a very important factor with having a vision, having the goals, but then create the habits so you can stick to that.
That's right.
And the habits, because for example, for me, it was a lot in the gym. Trust me, there's been times where I'm like doing the reps. I'm like, well, I don't see anything. I still got my bulge on my belly. And you keep doing it, you keep doing it, you're adjusting it a little bit, you get a little bit better. You maybe add something, take something away, but you trust the process. And you have a coach, hopefully. And that's the same thing here. So I just kind of wanted to, because I think it's a very important factor
Yeah,
to create that habit and trust the process.
absolutely.